Reeves Immigration Law Group now brings you immigration law on your side.
Magandang gabi mga kababayan. Welcome to another Immigration Law on your side dito po sa PHLV Radio. Would you believe, kalagitnaan na po ng January kaagad. Pero Happy New Year pa rin po sa inyong lahat mula po sa amin dito sa PHLV Radio at sa Reeves Immigration Law Group. Galing po dyan sa San Francisco area. Nakikita niyo po sa inyong screen si Attorney FJ Diza. Mga kababayan, maganda pong pag-uusapan natin katulad po na na-post natin kanina sa ating social media pages. Alam niyo po, obtaining a US visa at any of the US consulates all around the world is pretty tough, especially with the high percentage of denials. And especially when you get denied, it actually becomes a lot more difficult to actually get a visa in the future. Kaya po naman, ang iba sa mga kababayan natin or some other individuals resort to fraud or misrepresentation just to be able to obtain the visa. Like an assumed name, ibang pangalan ang ilalagay, or they falsify their marital status. While some are successful in being able to obtain their visas in this way, may mga consequences pa rin mga kababayan. They face serious consequences in the future because of their fraudulent entry to the United States of America. Well, to walk us through this issue and the scenarios kung paano nangyayari ito, kasama na naman natin si Attorney FJ Diza, galing po sa San Francisco Bay Area, California. Magandang gabi po sa iyo, Attorney.
Magandang gabi, Kuya Yo, at to all our viewers and listeners, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat at marami pong salamat sa inyong pagtangkilit at panonood sa aming programang Immigration Law on Your Side at sa lahat po ng programa ng PHLV Radio. And as you mentioned, there are serious consequences ng paggamit ng fraudulent visa, and this is a very serious topic ng ating discussion ngayong gabi, Kuya Yo.
Maraming salamat, Attorney. And I'm sure mga kaibigan natin at mga listeners natin ay may mga tanong, i-comment nyo lang po o kaya ipadala nyo sa amin dito sa PHLV Radio, info@phlvradio.com o kaya sa mga social media outlets ng Reeves Immigration Law Group. So let's get right on to it, Attorney. So what are the consequences po of obtaining a fraudulent visa?
Yes, as you mentioned, Kuya, yung mga sample na binigay mo, di ba, yung paggamit ng ibang pangalan para makakuha ng visa, because at one point, sa mga applicant natin na they tried to obtain it under their real name, at provide lahat ng valid documents, but unfortunately, they get denied. The reason for the usually denial would be you don't have strong ties to your home country, di ba? Lalo na yung mga applicants are single or walang magandang trabaho, wala gaanong properties, because as you recall, para po kayo makakuha ng tourist visa, for example, you have to prove a strong ties, to your home country. That involves yung family ties, kung kayo po ay may asawa, may anak, or financial or business ties, kung maganda po ang trabaho nyo dyan sa Pilipinas, at meron kayong mga businesses or may mga properties na hindi nyo pwedeng iwanan. Kasi, siyempre, isipin ng consular officer is that, once an applicant for a tourist visa, ang presumption ng consular officer is that you have the immigrant intent. Ibig sabihin, hindi na po kayo babalik. So, once that you get denied, some people are very creative, or other agencies would advise to do something that's against the law, no? Sabihin, try natin ito ang gagamitin mo. And some people are, accept those recommendations, which we immigration attorneys is strongly discouraged, to consult to mga notaryo dahil walang responsibility sa bar. But anyway, Kuya, tama ka. So people are able to come and enter the United States using the fraudulent visa or using a fraudulent document to get that visa. Very specific po ang batas, ang Immigration and Nationality Act, that if one procured a visa, or documentation in order to obtain immigration benefits, yung kagaya na pag-usapan po natin, magiging inadmissible yung applicant. Anong ibig sabihin ng inadmissibility? That means that ang inadmissibility, that means that the applicant would not necessarily be refused a visa, pero susubukan din niya or i-require po siyang mag-submit ng waiver para pumapatawad yung ginawa niya. Sa anong paraan, no? Hindi basta-basta bibigyan ng visa, pahirapan din 'yan, and there are certain requirements or factors to consider bago sila mabigyan ng visa.
Ano po ang ilan sa mga samples ng misrepresentation o itong mga fraudulent act na ito na automatic magiging inadmissible siya?
Yes, Kuya Yo, ang sample nito, let's say nag-a-apply po sila ng tourist visa or yung mga H1Bs, sa consulate abroad, very common diyan, as we mentioned, yung paggamit ibang pangalan. Pangalawa is yung pag-file ng let's say applying for a tourist visa, pag-submit ng documentation showing that you have a business, right? When in fact you don't. Pangatlo would be yung paglagay ng pera sa bangko na hindi mo naman pera, or pag-procure ng, let's say, bank statements or certification stating na mayroon kayong X number of money sa bank na wala naman, di ba? So as I said sa prior discussion, where the consulate would check yung bank manager kung tama yung mga sinubmit na, or kung mayroon kayo talagang bangko doon, di ba? Or yung mga sa application naman for the H1Bs, yung mga professionals, tinitingnan din nila kung tama yung education po ninyo, or yung inyong diploma ay hindi galing sa recto, yung transcript of records, hindi galing sa recto. Sabihin nyo, tapos po kayo ng bachelor's degree or nakapasa sa license, yun pala hindi. So those are the possible documentation na hindi nakita ng consular officer, or had they known that these are fraudulent documents or these are not true, then the consular officer could have denied your visa. So very common to, Kuya Yo, hindi lang din yung mga nag-a-apply ng visa abroad, kundi yung mga nandito na rin sa Amerika, di ba? So let's say nandito na on a tourist visa and they applied, for example, extension of their visa, ganun din, at nag-submit sila ng fraudulent documents o nag-apply sila ng asylum na hindi rin tama, so they are all inadmissible. Anything that's using fraudulent documentation or procuring a visa fraudulently, in order to get that work authorization or a visa, would render them inadmissible. And take note sa mga listeners po natin, ang pinag-usapan po natin ay ang consequence yun, yung iba hindi lang inadmissible, yung inadmissible, ibig sabihin hindi sila makakakuha kaagad ng visa. Binibigyan sila ng opportunity para makapag-file ng waiver, para mapatawad, at pag-usapan din natin ngayon kung ano yung waiver na yan. But certain fraud or misrepresentation, wala pong waiver yan, kagaya ng marrying a US citizen in order to obtain immigration benefits, walang waiver yan. Lifetime ban po kayo dyan that you are not eligible for any kind of waiver. Now, yung ibang pagpa-file din ng asylum application, yung mga fraudulent claims na walang basihan din, lifetime ban din yan. So just be careful of what you do, because there are, as you mentioned, Kuya Yo, adverse consequences. And I think, and I would strongly recommend rather that before you file for anything in the future, let's say nag-asawa na po kayo ng US citizen, or yung inihintay yung priority date ng magulang nyo are becoming available, after 10 to 15 to 20 years, or probably yung anak nyo nag-21 na at you want to file adjustment of status, before you file anything, and especially if you have this immigration history, right, you need to consult an immigration attorney, because number one, pwedeng i-deny yung application nyo. Number two, they might require you a visa. And number three, baka hindi po kayo eligible to file a waiver if your filing is not, hindi maganda yung pagka-present nyo or iba ang nabanggit nyo sa inyong application.
Nabanggit mo, attorney, kanina yung waiver. Is this a way for you to be able to get out of the sticky situation, so to speak? Kung if you've committed a fraud or misrepresentation in the past and you still want to get a green card, how does this waiver work, attorney?
That's a very important question, because not everyone who committed fraud would or can avail of the waiver. They have to have a qualifying relative, Kuya Yo. So they have to have, number one, siyempre may basihan ng pag-file ng green card. For example, di ba, naging 21 na yung anak nila, naging available na yung priority date nila, right? And then, siyempre may visa availability, and then also they have to have a qualifying relative para makapag-file ng waiver kasi hindi as I mentioned hindi lahat ng mga aplikante pwede mag-file. So for example, isa sa mga requirements ng waiver is that the applicant must have a qualifying relative. Ano yung qualifying relative na to? Very specific din ang Immigration and Nationality Act that the only qualifying relatives nito would be number one, a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident spouse, right? Asawa. Pangalawa, a lawful permanent resident or a U.S. citizen parents. So dalawa lang yon, dalawang classification lang ng qualifying relative. Parent or spouse who could either be a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident. Now, hindi lang yan lang, Kuya Yo. You have to also prove that these qualifying relatives would suffer extreme, hardship pag hindi po na-approve ang visa nila. And sa mga viewers natin, mga anak ko hindi po eligible na mag-file ng waiver kasi children, even if they are minors, are not considered qualifying relative. So for example, Kuya Yo, si Pedro nag-apply ng visa sa embassy sa Pilipinas at hindi siya nabigyan, as we mentioned, ng tourist visa, and then nag-consult siya ng agency o nag-try siya ulit under a different name. So ginamit niya ngayon ay si Juan. So yung si Pedro naging Juan, pumasok siya sa Juan de la Cruz, right, sa Amerika, at nakapag-asawa siya ng US citizen. Right? Or nagkaroon siya ng karelasyon dito sa Amerika at nagkaroon ng anak, let's say yung kanyang naging asawa ay hindi pa US citizen or wala ring status kagaya niya, nagkaroon siya ng anak at naghintay ng 21 years old yung bata, and sabi attorney 21 na, hinintay ko na, tamang-tama, it's about time for me to get my green card after 30 years of working in the US, pwede na ako mag-green card. But there's a question that hindi po pwede because as we mentioned, children are not qualifying relative. So for Juan to be able or for Pedro to be able to get that green card, siyempre mayroon dapat siyang asawang US citizen. Or yung nanay niya is a US citizen, nandito na siya. Let's say yung kanyang anak, 21 years old na, tapos yung nanay niya nandito, 80 years old na and live with the mom, right? So pwede niyang gamitin ngayon yung nanay niya as the qualifying relative. Pardon me for what I've done. I committed fraud. I am actually Pedro, but use Juan de la Cruz. I want to be Pedro again, right? Siyempre yung kanyang pangalan sa kanyang application, Kuya Yo, would be the real name kasi ipoprovide Kuyaan yung kanyang birth certificate, at saka yung relationship na with the mom. So yun ang ipoprovide niya to prove that the mother would suffer extreme hardship para mabigyan po siya ng visa. So hindi po madali, Kuya Yo, dahil siyempre applying for a waiver is you're pleading the US government, specifically USCIS, to forgive you and to show that you are the primary reason why your qualifying relative would suffer extreme hardship kung kayo po ay madideport or kung ang waiver po niyo ay madideny.
Paano, attorney, kung after everything, na-prove ng USCIS na walang extreme hardship, end of the line na ba yun, attorney?
Yes, Kuya Yo. No, it's not end of the line. That's why it's really important sa mga kababayan natin to consult an immigration attorney and see, discuss, evaluate. Hindi lang yung babasahin mo instructions and okay lang ko pala mag-file ng form, magbayad ako ng filing fees and that's it. As an immigration attorney, this is our life. This is what we do every day, and we know exactly what the USCIS is looking in your case. Even if the slam dunk cases that we say, let's say your mother mo is a cancer survivor, for example, or your spouse is a cancer survivor, and we think that it's going to be slam dunk. Still, you need someone else to guide you, right, on how to prepare an approvable waiver. Or in a situation where si Juan nag-asawa ng US citizen at bata pa sila, let's say they are on their 30s, walang medical condition, walang sakit, walang records, walang hardship essentially. But looking at also the other factors, let's say yung asawa niya, mayroon siyang stepson who has also some learning problems. So mayroon pala siyang, or what we call PWD, people with disability that also requires full-time attention from parents. So even if the law says children are not considered qualifying relative, Kuya Yo, as an attorney, we can connect yung hardship ng bata dun sa magulang, di ba? So, paano kung i-deport si Pedro, anong mangyayari sa asawa? So, let's say, sasamahan ng asawa si Pedro sa Pilipinas, anong mangyayari sa bata? Right? So, it's also extreme hardship for the mom. Yung pag-isip lang niya na, walang mas magandang education or assistance pag sila umuwi sa Pilipinas. Diba? Dahil at least yung mga people with disability in the United States are taken care of or may mga benefits sila dito. So we need to be very proactive, and state every single thing that people that you think would help your case. Lahat ng mga paraan para ma-approve, you need to be, be very creative in order for you to convince USCIS. And again, as I said, yung hardship na yan, mahirap yan, Kuya Yo, kasi it's not enough that you prove that you have the relationship, di ba? Napatunay, mag-asawa nga kayo, na-approve yung petition ng asawa mo, but doesn't mean na ibibigay sa'yo ang green card, because that would also, kapag na-deny, as you mentioned, ano yung relief? And it's a very good question, because ano ang decision na gagawin namin dyan? Now, if the client comes to us, right, after the denial, let's say they did it themselves or with a notary or with a lawyer who does not know what the lawyer is doing, right? Nagkaroon ng denial, siyempre evaluate natin yan. Refiling is an option. So you have to refile, right? Ang maganda sa immigration, Kuya, walang double jeopardy, right? Like when you file it, that's done, hindi ganon. And na-deny ka, that's the end of the world for you. No, the beauty about immigration practice is that you can always do it again and refile it, as long as you can show that this is a different, filing, why you deserve a second chance to be heard again, right? And you have to include the reason why. And that's also an option, right? Hindi nakita ng abogado dati na ito may anak pala, ito wala ngang sakit, but there's a psychological evaluation, right? Hindi siya nagpa-evaluate sa psychiatrist. Now, usually sa mga client namin na walang medical condition, right, na pinapakita, we also do a psychological evaluation where, hindi nakakatulog yung US citizen spouse dahil sa kaiisip kung mawalang asawa niya, what will happen to him or to her. They've been together for the last 20 years. Ano yung impact sa kanyang mental health, and that needs to be evaluated, kasi hindi enough yung declaration na hindi ako nakatulog sa gabi, hindi na ako nakakain, nagiging obese ako or naging payat ako dahil dito. But also, as mentioned sa mga kababayan natin, ito is you have to see a psychiatrist or psychologist and evaluate your case para magiging mayroon tayong supporting documents at hindi lang yung magiging self-serving yung sinasabi mo. So either that, refiling, and you've got two bites of the apple and try again. Or even if we handled previously, Kuya, yung mga client na ganyan, and hindi mo na maiwasan lahat, approval lahat yan, pag nade-deny and there are supervening incident, di ba? Dumating na yung magulang dahil hinintay na maging citizen yung isang kapatid, pinatisyon yung magulang who are the 70s and 80s at, may mga medical condition din sila at kailangan nila ng assistance, that this could be a additional qualifying relative. So, we can always refile, right? But if we think there's a big mistake sa immigration or error, we can always file an appeal, appeal the case and, see what immigration says. The good thing about refiling, Kuya Yo, is that you file also the adjustment where the applicant is able to get a work authorization. Yun ang maganda nun. And the longer the case would be, the better then. Kasi, dumadami yung equities mo eh. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not only proving extreme hardship sa kamag-anak po ninyo, you have also to show you as the applicant is a good person, of good moral character. Anong ibig sabihin yan? That you don't have a criminal records, criminal arrest, walang DUI, right? That you are a contributing member of the society. Number one dyan is that you are working and you're paying your taxes, right? If you can show that for the last 20 years, since I came to the US, kahit wala kang social security, may TIN ka, and you're paying taxes, that's a positive thing, right? 20 years paying taxes, you're not claiming public benefits, right? You are also nagvo-volunteer po kayo sa mga organizations kagaya ng simbahan, right? Or mga activities ng inyong mga anak, kayo po yung nagko-coach ng basketball or football or alam mo yun, tumutulong sa nagta-traffic sa daan, 'di ba? Sa mga schools, minsan may mga trafficker diyan, pakita mo lahat yung mga contributions mo to show that you are deserving a green card and deserving to be a permanent resident in the US. Now, caveat sa mga kababayan natin, because if there are situations where na-deny na yung adjustment, Kuya Yo, na-deny yung waiver, usually during Trump's administration, they issue a notice to appear. So ibig sabihin niyan, i-deport na kayo and you need to sue a judge. Hindi tipong na-deny ka, uwi ka kinabukasan, or uwi ka in 30 days. Hindi po ganun yan. So you have the option to either, number one, refile, number two, appeal, or number three, if the USCIS referred you to the immigration court, then you can always renew that in court, right? So minsan mas maganda pa nga ang court i-convince dahil dahil sa USCIS, Kuya Yo, it's more of paperworks na you have to submit these voluminous documents, legal brief of the attorney, declaration of your client and their relatives, but I don't know if the immigration officer would look every single thing that you file. But the good thing about your client going to court is that, especially if you have maybe 50-50 chance, iba yung human interaction, di ba? Nakikita ka ng judge, nakikita ka ng trial attorney, that how you contributed to the economy, to the US, how helpful you are to your family members. Ikukwento yung buhay mo, and the reason also why you obtain that green card, that visa. Bakit mo ginawa yung pagkuha ng pag-submit ng ibang pangalan para makarating sa Amerika, and why is that important for you? Makaahon sa hirap sa Pilipinas at makarating dito to provide for your family. Doon magre-revolve lahat doon. It's not something that you try to justify na kasi ganito, hindi ganon. And of course, that's part of the narration pag kayo po nagte-testify, but also like the reason why and admitting that it's really it's wrong, di ba? So I think kasi mga kababayan natin, minsan mahirap sila umamin ng kanilang mistake, and sometimes marami sa kanila na kasi ganito. So, they try to blame the circumstances or someone else sa paggawa noon. Ang sinasabi ko sa mga kababayan natin is admit your mistake. Alam mong it's mali. Hindi tipong hindi mo alam na mali, because obviously that's a mistake, right? Aminin mo, because, most immigration judges or all immigration judges and attorneys is that admitting the mistake and knowing the consequence. Right? Kasi nga, naghirap ka na rin dito. Kung titignan mo, kung 10 taon ka na dito, walang papel, TNT, nagtatrabaho under the table, even the jobs that you don't want. But even if you choose this path, right, kung wala naman kayong ginawang masama at kayo po'y ginawa niyong maging mabuting mamamayan, and eventually you're able to find a pathway to green card, those are the things that you need to present to USCIS or to the immigration judge. Now, the extreme hardship, Kuya Yo, kasi is medyo mahirap din yan, di ba? So it's not, as I mentioned, even if the relationship is there, the extreme hardship is harder to prove, and for them to justify the denial. That's why it's really important to have that attorney and look every single thing in your case para magkaroon kayo ng approval, because going to court would be more expensive and time consuming. As pag na-deny kayo sa USCIS, going to court would take you another 3 to 5 years bago po kayo ma-hear ng inyong kaso. If you have a very weak case, then probably that works for you. But if you have a very strong case, then of course we want your case to get approved from the get-go. So yun po ang ating mga recommendation and advice sa ating mga kababayan na may mga problema sa kanilang visa.
And of course, maganda nga talagang kumonsulta sa ating mga kaibigan na, are experts on this. And ilan sa mga experts sa immigration, mga kababayan, ay nandito sa ating mga kaibigan sa Reeves Immigration Law Group. We'll head over to a quick break, attorney. When we come back, we have a couple of questions here. Isa sa mga tanatanong dito, paano kung hindi sinasadyang nagkamali pala yung i-file mo? Sa dami-dami ng questions, mali yung na-i-file mo, and now you're being being accused of doing a fraudulent application, paano daw ito mareremedyohan, attorney? Sa pagbabalik po natin dito sa Immigration Law on Your Side, we'll just remind our audience, attorney, kung paano nila makokontak ang ating law firm sa Reeves Immigration Law Group. Magbabalik po kami. Diyan na po kayo.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has been representing immigrants for nearly 40 years. Reeves Immigration Law Group has been fighting for its clients through experience and expertise. With immigration lawyers you can access at reasonable fees, even on Saturday. Payment plans are also available. Call us for your immigration solutions. We can do worldwide telephone and Skype consultations. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009. Reeves Immigration Law Group has offices in Los Angeles, San Francisco, China, and Philippines. See us at www.rreeves.com. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009.
Mga kababayan, nagbabalik po ang Immigration Law on Your Side. Hatid po sa atin ng Reeves Immigration Law Group. Pinag-uusapan po natin ngayong gabi, what are the immigration consequences of committing fraud or misrepresentation in obtaining a visa? Marami na pong napaliwanag si Attorney Diza bago tayo nag-break. At isa po sa mga itinatanong ninyo at siguro itanong na rin natin kay Attorney, is it considered fraud or misrepresentation kung ang inyong filing sa dinami-dami ng itinanong ay nagkamali lang po ang kanilang i-file?
The fraud or misrepresentation requires it should be material to the application. Like you intentionally either omit a material fact or added a material fact in your application. So for example, in a tourist visa application, right, you said that you are married, right, when you are in fact you're single. So that is a material fact, because once you go, one of the reasons for applying for a tourist visa is that you're coming to the US on a temporary basis, right? And you have the strong ties back home. So yung ties mo dito, you said, sinasabi mo, oh, I'm married, yung para single ka. Kasi kung nalaman ng consular officer yung kuya yo that you're single, most likely hindi ka bibigyan ng tourist visa, di ba? Unless you show otherwise, like you own a business, you have a good job, may anak ka, and stuff like that. So that is immaterial. But yung mga harmless error, kuya yo, right? So nag-apply po kayo ng adjustment or citizenship ninyo, right? The good thing about if you're already in the United States and you apply for an application benefits kagaya ng work authorization or green card application or even citizenship or naturalization. So for example, yung tawag nito, yung travels nyo outside the US, for example, right? You said that yung nagkamali ka ng date. So instead na inilagay mo is travel to the Philippines from 2000, let's say January 1 to June of, you said 2019 instead of 2020, okay lang yon, right? Just because yung tinatawag natin timely retraction and once you get the interview, that's the purpose of the interview. Pag nandito ka sa US, they'll make sure that all the information you provided on the forms are accurate as possible. So yun ang purpose ng interviews for the adjustment of status and naturalization, Kuya Yo. And even if there are major mistakes in filling out the forms, it's okay to correct there. Hindi tipong i-hide mo yon or intention mo gagawin yon. Kaya nga you are, before they conduct the interview, Kuya Yo, they put you under oath and, they ask you to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And you're under the penalty of perjury, when you are being questioned at the interview. So okay lang po yon na i-correct yung mistake during the interview, right? And also, even if there are kind of material, if you're already in the US, it's a different situation kuya kung hinaid po ninyo yan, di ba? So tinago mo po yung information na yan, and only the officer would discover that, right? For example, yung mga kababayan natin na who came here under yung P22 fraud where they were petitioned as single, yung pala they were married back home in the 1990s na wala pa yung NSO or PSA who would track down or trace your marital status. So ang embassy noon hindi yun nagre-request ng CENUMAR or Certificate of No Marriage. But when you apply for citizenship, yun nakalusot kayo sa embassy and you apply for citizenship, and then you also did not declare that you're married, and then you did not declare that you have children, And of course, pag nag-investigate ng immigration at nalaman o may 5 anak pala kayo and married, and that's a different story. Those are material facts that would impact your case. So it's a case-by-case scenario. You have to ask yourself that those informations that you're trying to hide or the informations that you're trying to provide, are those material to your application? And if the answer is yes, then the answer or the consequence should be, you committed fraud or misrepresentation. But if the answer is no, if it's a harmless, right, error, it's not called misrepresentation, then there might be a way out for the applicant to be able to fix their status or green card in the future. Now, it's also a good question, Kuya Yo. Yung paano yung mga hindi nag-a-adjust dito, di ba? So let's say hindi sila nag-asawa or wala silang anak, they will be stuck here forever, right? So kahit may anak sila, they are not able to get their green card, unless mag-asawa sila. Now, for people who obtain a tourist visa naman, Kuya Yo, at bumalik sa Pilipinas, di ba? At ayaw naman nila dito o walang paraan para mapag-green card, umuwi sa Pilipinas, and then nag-reapply ng tourist visa at doon nalaman na, hey, you committed fraud in the past. So doon pa lang na-discover. Ang consequence naman nun, Kuya Yo, is that let's say yung aplikante maganda naman ang business. For example, he owns businesses, restaurants, 5 restaurants, at walang question na meron siyang pera to come here on a tourist. But they look at the immigration history and applications and say, hey, you committed fraud in the past. Itong tao ba na to makakakuha pa ng tourist visa? And the answer is, pwede siya mag-file. May waiver din dyan sa mga nag-apply ng tourist visa, Kuya Yo. D3 waiver sa mga non-immigrant. Hindi kasing hirap ng pagkuha ng waiver sa mga mag-green card. You just have to prove na hindi kayo threat to national security, and this thing happened long time ago. Pwede pa rin silang bigyan ng tourist visa despite the immigration history. And especially sa mga kababayan natin dyan sa Pilipinas na may history ng fraud or even crimes, may waiver lahat yan at may paraan para makakuha kayo ng green card. So if these things happened already, right, and of course you are a new person now, right, kasi hindi naman nagre-reflect, Kuya Yo, di ba, yung nangyari sa iyo one time in the past does not reflect who you are now. So there might be some options for you to be able to get a visa or green card in the United States.
Mm-hmm. One of the more interesting questions or probably feedback that we got here, attorneys, sa ating programa, you were saying that eventually if you committed fraud in the past, immigration will find out and it's going to come out. So ang tanong nitong ating listener is, how far back do the immigration ang tinatago nilang mga record? It goes without saying sa sinasabi nyo na whatever it is in the past, they will find it out. But just for the sake of conversation, gaano katagal ba, attorney, ang mga records na kinikip ng immigration? Or is it like if you committed it even way back in the past, lalabas at lalabas yan?
I would say they have the records all throughout. I mean, the embassy, the US are very good at keeping the records. May mga kliyente ako, attorney, more than 10 years naman na yan, hindi na yan malalaman. But I said no. I have clients whose case was as far back as early or late 80s, right? Or early 90s. Nandun pa yung records, Kuya Yo. So, and they came to us after the fact, and they were able to find out that, meron kang tourist visa application in the 1990s. You were able to get a investment visa, na-deny ka, and then you came back. There are records. There's always a way for them to find out, right? Unlike immigration attorneys in California, where we shred your file after 5 years, right? But now we are also, we have a system, yung cloud, so nandun na yung records nyo save na sa folder sa cloud, so nandun pa rin, even if we shred your physical records. The same thing with the US Embassy. I think they keep the record. And surprisingly, it's not surprisingly, it's a fact that when you go to your interview sa inyong adjustment or green card application or citizenship, lahat ng prior immigration applications, Kuya Yo, nasa computer nila eh. From the time you apply for a tourist visa, nagkaroon ka ng denial, nagkaroon ka ng change of status, to adjustment of status, removal of condition, or any of your immigration history, nandoon yon. So just be careful. That's why sa mga kababayan natin, if the case are complicated, I really want to see your immigration records before I file immigration benefits for them, because you don't want surprises later on. I mean, it's not something that we cause our client what to say, but we have to confront them to reconcile, and say what their thoughts or what they can say about this one. Kasi baka naman nakalimutan, di ba? So it's always important to know, because my advice sa mga client ko is that you don't want to go to war without not knowing what your opponents are, di ba? Or what they have against you. So, very important. Kasi once the immigration officer will ask you, sinabi mo dito, you own a, what do you call this, a gasoline shell station, when you applied for a tourist visa. Is that true? Hindi tipong, wala naman akong sinabing ganun, or wala naman ganyan. Pirma mo yan, di ba? So, something like that. So, it's really important for sa mga kababayan natin to know, to remember that what the immigration officer or the consulate abroad, they still have your file regardless of what. The best thing is, of course, understanding and knowing what you did and what are the consequences. And if there's a way not to get away with it by consulting an attorney, right, and filing the necessary paperwork, and that's the best route. Because you cannot create a mistake by another mistake, kuya, di ba? So you already committed a mistake in the past by presenting a fraudulent document, and now you are committing another mistake by lying under oath. So you don't want to have that double whammy in your application, in your immigration applications.
Kaya sa mga kababayan natin, especially na nandyan sa Pilipinas, meron pong office ang Reeves Immigration Law Group dyan po sa Makati. Attorney, unless you have other issues or information about this topic, maganda siguro ma-remind natin sila ng ating services sa Reeves Immigration Law Group, especially in this time of pandemic.
Yes, Kuya, at this time of pandemic, we understand the many hardships sa ating mga kababayan at people looking for immigration attorneys. We render free consultation and also discounted rate sa ating mga contracts kung may mga cases po kayo, at Reeves Immigration Law Group. We have offices in San Francisco. We are working remotely. Kasama dyan yung sa LA area. We go to the office once or twice a week. We follow CDC guidelines and local laws. Especially California now is a hotbed for the COVID. We don't want to be part of the problem. Hopefully, we get this over very soon dahil meron ng vaccinations. We can do Skype or Zoom consultation, parang ginagawa namin ni Kuya free to assess your immigration concerns wherever you are. Right? We accommodate all all clients throughout the world, and as long as your issues are U.S. immigration. Karamihan po ng abogado namin are immigration law specialists, lecturers, or mga speakers ng American Immigration Lawyers Association, and we also specialize in immigration only. This is what our what do you call this, line of practice. We do only immigration. So lahat ng klaseng immigration, mapa-family, deportation, removal, appeals, employment, lahat po yan ginagawa namin na immigration. We also have an office in Makati who would assist you kung kayo may mga application, right? Schedule you an interview at the embassy, follow up with the embassy kung ano na ang status ng case nyo, or mag-set ng appointment, with your attorney whatever immigration concerns. Maraming salamat po, and as our topic indicates, yung fraud and misrepresentation is not as easy as 1, 2, 3. It's not as easy as marrying U.S. citizen and having a relationship and establish a family. It's showing the extreme hardship to your U.S. citizen spouse or parents. Maraming salamat, Kuya at sa lahat po kayong mga viewers natin. Keep watching PHLV Radio.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Diza. Maraming salamat po sa Reeves Immigration Law Group. It's another year na naman tayo ngayon at 2021 na, mga kaibigan. And obviously, there's a lot of things going on. So, tumutok lamang po dito sa PHLV Radio, especially dito sa ating immigration law on your side. If there are issues developing affecting immigration, definitely we will be broadcasting that for you here at Immigration Law on your side. Well, especially in these times na talagang napakainit ng ating political climate. Ano po ba, attorney? Meron po ba kayong...
Yes,
Go ahead po.
malapit ng inauguration ni Biden, and hopefully we'll find out the immigration policies that he's going to do, after the inauguration, Kuya Yo. So watch out pa rin, and keep listening and watching to us, PHLV Radio, Immigration Law on your side.
Maraming salamat, attorney. And on behalf of PHLV Radio at Reeves Immigration Law Group, ito po si Kuya Yo, nanggagaling dito sa studios ng PHLV Radio sa Maryland Parkway in Las Vegas. Pwede po kayong sumula, 3909 South Maryland Parkway, Suite 215. Dito po sa Las Vegas, Nevada, 89119. Para sa inyong mga comments, suggestions, at mga questions sa ating immigration law on your side. So, attorney, hanggang sa susunod po, magkita-kita tayo dito. Sana malapit tayo magkita dito sa Las Vegas kung ma-okay na itong COVID-19, ang pandemic. Hopefully, we see each other again here in Las Vegas. Sa ating mga tagapakinig po, maraming salamat sa mga listeners sa app. Thank you again. And sa viewers sa Amazon Fire TV, maraming salamat po. We will see you next time.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has just brought you Immigration Law on Your Side. Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific on PHLV Radio.